There was a war in the land of Israel. King Saul and the Israelites were fighting the Philistines. One of the Philistines was a giant. His name was Goliath. He was a very big and strong giant. The Israelites were terrified of him. Goliath shouted to the Israelites. He told them to choose a man to fight him. No one wanted to fight the giant. Goliath shouted to them every morning and every night for 40 days. None of the Israelites would fight him. David's brothers were in the Israelite army. Jesse sent David to take them some food. David saw the giant. He heard Goliath shouting. He saw that the men were afraid of Goliath. David said he would fight the giant. His brothers were angry. They said David should be taking care of the sheep. David knew God would help him. He picked up 5 stones. He took his sling and went to fight Goliath. Goliath saw David was young. He was angry. He shouted at David and made fun of him. David shouted back. He said God would help him kill Goliath. Goliath came at David to fight. Then David put a stone in his sling and threw the stone. The stone hit Goliath in the head. Goliath fell to the ground. David took Goliath's sword and cut off his head. The Philistines saw David kill Goliath. They were afraid and ran away. God helped David kill the giant. King Saul saw that David killed Goliath. He sent for David. Saul told David to come and live in his house. Saul made David a leader of his army. God blessed David. His army won many battles for King Saul. The people of Israel loved David. The Israelites and the Philistines were fighting. King Saul and his sons were in the battle. Saul and 3 of his sons were killed. David heard that King Saul was dead. David was very sad. He fasted and prayed. David became the king of Israel. David was a good king. He loved God and obeyed his commandments. One evening, David saw a beautiful woman. Her name was Bathsheba. She was married to a man named Uriah. Uriah was a soldier. He was fighting in the war. David wanted Uriah to die. Then David could marry Bathsheba. It was wicked for David to want Uriah's wife. David sent Uriah to the front of the battle. He knew Uriah would be killed. Uriah was killed. It was wicked for David to have Uriah killed. David would eventually marry Bathsheba. They had a son named Solomon. God sent a prophet named Nathan to talk to David. Nathan told David God knew what David had done. God would punish David. David knew he had been wicked. He was sorry for his sins. He made sacrifices. He prayed to God to forgive him. David suffered because of his sins. He prayed to God often. He tried to be righteous. He was a good king. David was king for a long time. He became old. He wanted his son Solomon to be the next king. David asked Nathan, the prophet, to anoint Solomon to be king. David told Solomon to obey God's commandments. David died and was buried near Jerusalem. Now, the moral of these 2 stories, which intertwine together, is when you feel your greatest challenges are being overcome and overruled. Take 2. Now the moral here. Now there's 2 morals here. There'll be a time. There'll be a time when you're challenged and when you're overruled, and you feel like There's no possibility of an outcome. But with faith, you overcome the outcome. And once you overcome that outcome, you establish your success. You defeated what you thought you once could not defeat. But in the end, whoever your adversaries are, or who they are, you do not take advantage of what they have and worked for. To gratify your greed and needs. Then you become no better than the bully. Then you become no better than the bully. And you become one yourself.